everyone. Welcome to week number 1 of the Wandering Lattice Quilt Along. This week we are prepping our fabric, cutting, and then working through step number 6 on the pattern. So let's talk about prep next. When we talk about quilt prep, there are 2 major things that come into mind. First is selecting your fabrics and tools, and second is preparing your fabrics and tools. So as far as prep work, the only thing I really recommend before you get started is starching your fabric. Now, if you like to plan out your quilts, this is the time to take your coloring pages and figure out your quilt placement. As you can see, I prefer more of an organic, unplanned look, especially with this particular pattern.
Let's move on to cutting. To cut your fabric C strips, fold the fabric in half, match up your selvages, and then use that fold line to square up your first cut. Then cut it into 15-inch strips. Once you've cut the 15-inch strip, rotate the fabric, make sure your edges are still lined up, and then trim to 1.25 inches. If you've opted to use fat quarters instead of 10-inch squares, square up your fat quarter by folding it in half. Use the fold line as your straight edge and cut off one side. Now unfold, use your cut edge as your new straight edge, and cut a 10-inch strip from the long length of the fat quarter. Cut that into 2 10-inch squares. Our next step is to separate our layer cake into 2 piles. We're going to call these fabric A and fabric B. For the quilt on the right, I put all of my large prints in fabric A and used my smaller prints in fabric B. Because the line included small and large prints in a variety of colors, it gave it more of a scrappy look. Whereas on the left, with the exception of the one yellow block that I just noticed I goofed, all of the fabric A is my cool colors, so my purples, my blues, my greens, and then a smattering of white. And fabric B was the warmer colors, so red, pinks, oranges, and you can tell that has kind of a different look versus the large and small prints. It just depends on how you decide to divide up your layer cake.
Now that we have everything sorted, we've got everything cut, we are ready to start with step 4. And so we're going to take all of fabric A, and if you remember, that is green in our pattern, and we're going to set that off to the side. All of our fabric C, which is gray on our pattern, we're going to set that off to the side for now. And we're going to take all of our fabric B and we are going to cut it diagonally from corner to corner.
Because I'm going to be chain piecing all of my blocks in one go, I plan out all of my blocks by laying them out in order. So that's what you can see me doing here. I'm deciding which fabric B pairs I would like to be sewing together in the next steps. Step number 5 has us sewing our fabric B pairs together with a fabric C strip down the middle. Let's take a look at each of those steps individually. For step 5.1, we're sewing 1 fabric C strip to 1 fabric B triangle. If you're chain piecing, you'll sew 1 whole stack of these, keeping them in order, but if you're more comfortable, feel free to sew 1 pair at a time.
When you're attaching your red strips, you're going to, or your fabric C strips, you're going to turn right sides together, line up these edges, and just kind of eyeball the center. So you want roughly the center of your fabric C strip to be roughly in line with that corner. Let me move these out of the way. It does not have to be exact. But you do want a little bit of space at the end of each edge. What you don't want to do is start it exactly here, because when you go to square up, you're going to be missing your corner. So you need to make sure that your fabric C strip overlaps just a little bit on each corner.
5.2, we're going to iron the seam we just created. You have two options. You can either iron the seam open, which is what I recommend because it makes everything less bulky, or you can iron it to one side. Typically, if you're ironing to one side, the advantage is nesting seams. But since all of the seams are on the diagonal with this quilt, none of them are going to nest properly. And I found them much easier to match and sew over when I ironed them open.
And remember, you do not want to push while you're ironing. Pushing while you're ironing can distort your fabric. And that's one of the reasons that I like using my mini iron, is that I am less likely to push hard and lean into it because I'm seated at my little table. And if I'm going to iron it all one direction, I like to actually flip it over and iron it from the front. And just gently iron without pushing. So there are your two options. You pick what works best for you. Now that we have all of our seams ironed open, we're going to take the other half of our stack and sew them together. The trick when doing this you're going to line the edges up along here and attempt to keep these you're going to attempt to keep your points roughly perpendicular. Again, you're going to be trimming, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but some similarity would be nice. Because some of the pre-cuts are not exactly perfect, it is not going to look, it's not going to fall in the exact same spot. But I would recommend focusing on your corners versus this point here. We're going to iron the seams open again, or again towards fabric C. So if you've ironed towards fabric C, I would do the same on the other side, and if you've ironed them open, I would make them match. And remember, we're not pressing down hard. Because this is the bias of the fabric. So if you push really hard, you push your fabric out of straightness, basically. So there it is. We have now finished step 5. Okay, now we are ready for step number 6. We've got all of our pieces ironed, open. So we've got 2 seams that are either ironed opened or ironed towards fabric C, so towards the middle. And now we are ready to trim this first time. You're gonna need at least a 10-inch square ruler to trim up everything.
I've placed some masking tape so that hopefully you can kind of see where the 9.75 inch mark is on my ruler. There are 2 different diagonals. One diagonal is going to run corner to corner inside of the masking tape area, and the other diagonal is going to kind of fall off of the fabric. Don't use that diagonal, use the one that runs corner to corner within your 9.75 inch markings. And line that one up inside of your fabric C strip.
On my ruler, and I think you should be able to see it, these little right angled neons are just about the right width. So I kind of eyeball this step to make sure that this diagonal line runs down the center of fabric C. So that is the end goal. That diagonal line needs to run down the center of fabric C. This is perfectly center. I have overhang on both edges. And now I can make my first trim. And then of course I moved it a little bit, so get that back to square.
what I'm going to do is cut the right and the top. I can discard this. Now I'm going to lift, keep your ruler in the same position, and spin the block 180 degrees. Now I'm going to line the edge of the fabric up at 9.75 on the left and on the bottom. Double check that your fabric C is running down the middle. And I'm probably going to take these pieces of masking tape off. You should be able to see what I've been talking about now. Line that up. I'm pleased with the angles that I've got on fabric C. And now I can trim right and top. And now I have a perfectly square set of fabric B that's ready for step number 7.
And that's week 1 of our Wandering Lattice quilt along. Be sure to share some of your progress either in the Facebook group or using the hashtag on Instagram, Wandering Lattice QAL. We are giving away a fat quarter bundle of Christmas fabrics that is sponsored by the Gilded Needle. So to be eligible for that fat quarter bundle, I'll share a picture later this week with reminder to participate. To be eligible, 1, make sure you filled out the Google form that has the sign up information, and 2, make sure that you have shared photos. Every photo shared in either Facebook or the Facebook group or on Instagram counts as a entry to that giveaway, and I'll announce next week who's won. So I can't wait to see you guys next week and see all of the fun things that are happening. I'm so excited. I hope you all have fun.